Journey on, the magic lies within the trails we ride.
You're listening to the Journey On podcast with Warwick Schiller. Warwick is a horseman, trainer, international clinician, and author who helps empower horse people from all over the world with the skills, knowledge, and mindsets needed to create trusting partnerships with their horses. Warwick offers a free 7-day trial to his comprehensive online video library that includes hundreds of full-length training videos and several home study courses at videos.warwickschiller.com.
Just because you see what it shows.
G'day everyone, welcome back to the Journey On podcast. I'm your host Warwick Schiller, and today I am joined by my wife Robin.
Hi everybody. We're going to talk about the Journey On podcast summit, and we're really excited to do this.
Yeah, so today, the podcast summit happened about a month ago now, maybe 3 weeks ago now. It was in San Antonio, Texas, and we had a weekend where we had 22 of the guests from the first year of the podcast come along and present over 3 days to a room of 250 people.
Yep, 250. So there were about 270 in the room.
And this whole thing, Robin, was your idea. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you came up with the idea?
I'm not sure how I came up with the idea, but I just figured that it was going to be a good thing to get all of these talented people that you'd talk to on the podcast and get them in one room. And we didn't really know, well, it took on a different flavor from what I was thinking. You know, when I started thinking about it, I thought it would be kind of like a horse expo, but it would be one person going at a time, and that we'd have question and answer sessions, and maybe a person or two working with a horse and showing how they differed or didn't differ in how they approached it. And I had set up, I had rented Rancho Marietta, which is a big horse show facility, and they do a big horse expo there every year as well. And then you kind of reminded me that this podcast really isn't about horses.
Yeah, you had this idea like, oh yeah, we've got the arena and yada yada. I'm like, this is not about horses. We could do this. Some of the people we'd contacted, the presenters had said, so is there going to be availability for like a PowerPoint presentation, that sort of thing, which there wasn't at Rancho Marietta. And so I kind of said, this is not really about horses. Can we do it somewhere that doesn't, we don't need to have horses? Can we have it at like a function center?
And my learning curve went way up right then, because then I had to figure out how to find such a place. And I found out really quick that all the places that I wanted to go were really expensive. So Phoenix was my first choice, and it was really cost prohibitive. I looked at Tucson as well, and we love Arizona. We love the vibe in Arizona. And then I had gone to a Brene Brown training in San Antonio, Texas on the Riverwalk. And I remember being there, and I loved the Riverwalk. I would get up in the morning and go for a run, and I'm not a runner, but it was and it was hot, but it was a great vibe. You could stay at the hotel. You didn't need a car. You could go, there were restaurants all along the Riverwalk. It was beautifully maintained. And so I thought, well, I'll have a look at the Riverwalk. And I found this super cool website called hotelplanner.com. So I got on there and told them I needed rooms and told them I needed a conference room. And I got bids back from these different hotels. And this one hotel came up called the Drury. And the Drury was not only reasonably priced, which, for an inaugural event where you don't know if you're going to even fill it up, we wanted to be mindful of that. But they had these two cool features besides the room, of course. And besides, they were right on the Riverwalk, and it was an old bank building, and it just looked really like a cool venue. But they include this really pretty elaborate breakfast every morning. And they have this thing in the afternoon called a kickback. And so it's, I just thought it was going to be a drink. You get a drink and you get some hors d'oeuvres. But really it was 3 drinks and a light dinner. Like we ate dinner there a couple nights And it was all included in the room. So it was a perfect venue. And not having been there before we arrived, when we arrived, we were so pleasantly surprised and happy that it just ticked all the boxes.
Yeah, we were pleasantly surprised about that. And, we had invited 22 of the podcast guests to come and present. And we had decided we were going to have them do a TED Talk style talk, which we named a TIC Talk, which is TIC, Teach, Inspire, Connect. So we had them do that. And then we also had some panel groups, some breakout discussion, some panel groups where they sat up on stage and answered questions. And for me, my hopes and dreams of the whole thing was going to be that all the presenters show up, that we sell enough tickets to people coming to watch it to make it work, and we were also live streaming it. And my dream was, and they'll have the live stream work. That was what I was hoping. That was my best case scenario. But something happened there that was so much more than that. It was, I've had it referred to as the Woodstock of the horse world since then. And it was just, the energy in the place was off the charts. And what we're going to do in this podcast here today is we're going to chat to some of the presenters that were there and get their feedback from it. But it was, from day one, it was, as soon as it started that first day, it was like, oh, this is something that is way more than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and before we get into talking to some of the presenters, shout outs to everybody who helped. My two best friends showed up and they didn't know what they were getting into, and they just came along. And Cindy and Liz, they were awesome. Liz made sure that everybody stayed on time with their 20 minutes. And I just looked up today, actually, I should have looked this up way long time ago, about why TED Talks are only 18 minutes, and they're 18 minutes.
I looked it up today too.
Maybe it popped up because I was looking on Google, whatever. That's weird, but it's not. So there is science behind why, neurobiologically, why the 18 minutes works for them. And our TikTok, and I cannot remember who suggested this. I put out on social media, ideas I said, we're going to do a TED style talk, but we can't use TED. So give us some more acronyms. And I think her name was Robin. So shout out to whoever came up with the TIC, Teach, Inspire, Connect, because it works out super well. Anyway, there is science behind why the 18-minute works. It's a lot to do with, people's attention and the chemicals that come out of being curious. And so our 20-minute TikTok is 2 minutes more than the TED Talks, but it worked. And we had my best friend Liz, she was there. They had a big timer in front of them so they could keep track of themselves. And it was a huge success. Everybody stayed pretty much on time. I only had to cut off one person, and that was fine. Then my other best friend, Cindy, we've been friends since high school, these people. So they're my people. Cindy came and helped with the book sales. She's also our bookkeeper. So she made sure that, when we sold everybody's book, they all got their proceeds. So it was awesome. And she did more. And then her partner, Jason, came and he helped get people mic'd up. It was a family affair with Tyler running the tech and Warwick being the MC. And then I just basically, told everybody where to be, and they did what they needed to do. So thank you to everybody. And again, the jury was phenomenal. We may even go back there because they were fantastic.
Yeah. And, we started out the first morning, Kerri Lake was our first presenter, and she came on and her TikTok was just amazing. Just completely blew us away. And I had thought because I'm the MC, so I introduce everybody, and then when they come off, I introduce the next person. And I was sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, we've had the high point of the whole weekend on the first morning. It's got to go downhill from here. And the crazy thing was, it didn't. So we have 22 presenters, and all we told them was, I want you to get up on stage and in 20 minutes present the message that you want to give to the world. Tell us condense down the guts of everything you believe in 20 minutes. And Kerri absolutely rocked it, but then the next person came on and rocked it and rocked it and rocked it. And by the end of the first day, we knew that there was something going on. Like by the end of the first day, that there was an energy in the room, and you'll hear about it when we chat to the people, but there was an energy in the room that I've never really experienced before. What about you?
No, you kept saying the room is shifting, and I didn't understand what you meant until Nashawn got on and got off. And then I walked out to the lobby to check on Cindy, and the room was tilted. And I said, okay, now I get it. Like my world just shifted, and it won't ever be the same ever again. I had this one other time, and that was when Kerri Lake came to our house and we spent 5 days with Kerri. And I remember telling you, I think there's a before Kerri and an after Kerri. Like my world has shifted, and the world shifted right after Nashawn got off.
And what Robin's talking about with the shifting is for the day before and during the summit, I kind of felt like the floor was moving under my feet, like I was on the deck of a boat. And it's not like vertigo, because vertigo, you feel it in your head. You know, you kind of feel dizzy. But this felt like my head was perfectly clear, and I didn't feel dizzy. I just felt like the floor was shifting under my feet. And I mentioned it when I was up on stage, and a number of people, quite a few people in the audience, and a number of the presenters all said the same thing. And so in these interviews with the presenters, you will hear them talk about that, and some of them have their thoughts on what happened. But yeah, it was the whole thing was greater than the sum of all its parts, much greater than the sum of all its parts. And so we're going to do a few podcasts where we interview the presenters there, and we're going to kind of space them out because there's 22 presenters, but we're probably going to have about 6 on this one, and talk to them about their experience during the podcast summit and their experience integrating that once they got home from there.
Yeah, and then I'm also going to be talking to the ice bathers. We had 2 experiences. We had a Saturday and a Sunday experience of going and getting into an ice bath, and I had 13 and 12 people. So 25 people went through an ice bath experience. Warwick coached some of them, and I coached some of them. And so we're going to get on a Zoom call, and we're going to chat about that. So we'll turn that into a podcast as well.
So this was of a night time. So Saturday night, so Robin had rented there's a, what would you call that thing?
A human optimization lab.
There you go, a human optimization lab. So they have Swedish sauna, they have infrared sauna, they have red light therapy, they have the ice baths, they have massage chairs, they have compression therapy, and
they have a brain trainer. It's really cool. I don't know if you saw that, but it wasn't the Pandora Star. It was another thing. It was almost like a game, almost like that game where you hit the colors and you have to do the colors again. But it was different, and it was really cool. They said it was a brain trainer.
Wow.
It was those LED lights on the wall. It was really
cool.
Okay,
yeah. So Robin rented this thing after hours, and so the first night we took 13 over there, and then Sunday night we took 12 over there, and that in itself was it was transformational for, I think, everybody that did it.
For everybody who went through
and it was kind of an honor to be, you guided most of them through it. I guided some of them through it, but it was almost an honor to help them with that and be a witness to the transformation that you see in them getting into it. Their face is communicating a high level of fear, and you see them overcome that and come out the other side. And for me, it was quite humbling to be able to be a part of it.
Yeah, every person I help through the ice baths, it's transformational for both of us. It's really, really a cool experience, literally.
Yeah, so Robin is going to get some of those people on the podcast and do an actual podcast on their experiences, because not only are the stories amazing, but it might convince you guys to actually try that. So anyway, this podcast here is about the presenters and their thoughts on what happened at the summit. And Kerri Lake kicked off the summit, and Kerri Lake is going to kick off our interviews with the summit presenters. Kerri Lake, let's talk about the Journey on Podcast Summit.
Okay, as much as you want. It was such an amazing event. Unbelievable.
You know, the first, coming into it, we weren't sure how it was going to all go down. And, I was, for me, great would have been everybody shows up, the presenters all show up and do their business, and the live stream works. That's what I thought was going to be great. And then you were the first presenter up the first morning.
Right.
And you came in and absolutely rocked it. And towards the end of your presentation, I was kind of thinking, oh, well, that's going to be the highlight for the whole thing. Everybody else is going to kind of look bad compared to you.
Well, yeah. It was funny going in, even before it all started. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I went in knowing that we're all there because we love horses, right? Horses organized this whole thing and brought us all together because they touch our hearts in so many different ways. So that, and plus knowing how your interviews have gone, on the podcast leading up to this, has been so much about honoring who people are as individuals and what makes them tick, not just what do they do in the world, but why are they doing what they do? And you give people space to share from that perspective, and you're going to get a bunch of hearts coming together and just celebrating what we love together. So coming in and being the first speaker, I felt completely honored. And I thought, like, how can I really highlight the fact that this is about what we love to share in the world? It's all about the love. So I'm just really happy the feedback I've gotten about it, about my talk it blows my mind that people really were touched and received that this really is about what we love and sharing that together. Like, no walls between us. Let's just have a blast. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, your talk was absolutely amazing. But then the funny thing was everybody else brought their A game and
my God.
their A openness and their A vulnerability, and it was just amazing. That whole first day it just kept adding and adding and adding. By the end of the first day, we were like, what the hell was that? And I remember the second morning, yes. I got in the elevator to go down sometime in the morning, and the elevator doors open, and there's Kerri Lake standing in the elevator, and I stepped in the elevator, and you looked me in the eye, and you said, Dude,
no, but you said something before that. We walked into the elevator and you looked at me and you said, what the hell just happened? And that's when I said, dude, that's like the only exclamation that can encompass all of the feelings all at once. Dude, yes, yes.
I was on the 17th floor. I'm not sure what floor you came from, but we're on the 17th floor. I hop in, I say, what the hell happened yesterday? And you looked at me and you said, dude. And then we just rode down together in silence.
Yes, we did. With big fat smiles on our face.
That's all there was to say.
Yes. And that just perpetuated for the rest of the weekend, and I heard so many people after you shared that on the next morning, I could hear walking around people just looking at each other and going, dude. So it was a thing. So much fun.
So after it was all over, what were your thoughts about the whole experience?
Really, that together, all of the presenters and all of the participants, we created something that didn't exist before. My friend Kay had my favorite quote about the whole thing, and she said, in the equestrian community, there's so much us versus them. But here at the summit, there was only us. And for this many people to come together, sharing, open, vulnerable, listening, welcoming each other at tables, at lunch and everything, all of those hearts coming together amplify the space of welcome, excluding nobody. And really what happened is we created something that's far more than the sum of the parts. Everybody, I felt, was equals, I mean, yeah, some of us were on the stage, some of us were not on the stage, but it really was an honoring of what's common to all of us, that is whatever we love, and recognizing that we're not alone. So coming out of the summit, I felt so blessed to have been a part of it, to be a part of it, to be a part of this ripple that now exists, where people can't deny anymore that there is a purity of love among humans in the equestrian world. And we all illuminated that. We created that space and lit it up together. And I feel like we're just getting started, honestly.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this whole thing goes to. You know, you mentioned a number of times horses in there, but, you know, the thing I really got out of all the presenters was, and I talk about it quite a bit in the podcast, but the wisdom of the natural world.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You know, horses are part of the natural world, and I think that's why they help transform us, but it's not because we ride around on them and we enjoy doing that or that sort of thing. I think in order to get along well with them, you have to surrender to the natural order of things, which is not the secluded, you're over there, I'm over here, we're separate from each other type mentality, but it's that whole connected mentality. I think for me, that's the big thing I got out of it.
It's so beautiful. So beautiful. What you're talking about asks each of us as humans to acknowledge the part of ourselves that already does know harmony with the natural world. It's already resident, right? But we've been conditioned and bullied and bludgeoned and educated to function on a different set of priorities. And so what I hear you pointing to right there and talking about is, hey, let's rediscover and kindle a new relationship with the part of us that is already well connected, well in touch, and naturally looking to harmonize with the natural world, physical natural, for the spiritual, the elemental, the etheric. It's all part of it. It's all part of life existing. And humans are now coming to the place where we can ask this question of, how do I re-include myself in that which is common to all of life?
You know, the bit where you said about, you know, we've been bullied and bludgeoned and conditioned or whatever, kind of reminds me of when Jane went off in that intuition group panel discussion.
Oh,
when the question was, how do you find your intuition, and Jane took the microphone and just went off on basically the world for taking our for civilization taking our intuition away from us. And it was just, I mean, that was day 3, and you know, at the start of day 3 I'm thinking, this cannot keep going on. And then the presenters on day 3 were amazing. And then Jane and Rupert and Leslie in that intuition discussion just brought the house down, I thought.
Yeah, basically lived it, like demonstrating this is what it looks like when you're not in the way of it, you know? I mean, Rupert showing up and dancing. I mean, it doesn't really get much better than that. This is what it looks like when you don't filter, when you don't try to control and worry about everybody's comfort, but you say, you know what, here's my heart, and you're going to be comfortable or you're not, but here it is. That is what nature does. Nature does not control itself, right? Nature perpetuates life. And yeah, just watching people become that space, become that expression, it's absolutely priceless. It is absolutely priceless. And you can't really say it was a crescendo from beginning to end, because like you keep pointing out, everybody fully showed up. So, I mean, it was like 23 fireworks shows, and we just got to sit there in awe the whole time.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of is Tyler, my son Tyler. He's a musician, you know, and we went up to San Francisco a few years ago to see Slash. So Miles Kennedy is a singer. So Miles Kennedy and Slash did a concert up there, and we get to go and see Slash. And you know, Slash is an amazing guitarist, but he did these 2 at least 10-minute guitar solos during the night, to where, you know, he does a guitar solo, and about 3 minutes in, you're thinking, that was amazing. It's going to finish here in a second. And then 5 minutes in, he's still going. And then 7 minutes in, you think, this can't go on any longer. And it just keeps going on at that level to where, you know, when I got to see Slash play the guitar, then I was like, okay, I've now seen someone. It's not about the guitar. It could have been a cello. You know, I've seen someone just lose themselves in what they were doing to where they were just, they were one with the universe sort of thing. And that's kind of what every presenter was like at that. It didn't get better and it didn't get worse. You started off with a bang and it just stayed there the whole time.
Yeah, totally. You know, when I'm listening to you talk right now, it's making me think, you know, it's an opportunity for people to adjust their expectation. I think it's common for people to relate to this scale of better or worse. It goes up, it must come down. Well, what if we're changing that? What if there isn't a up and down anymore? What if we're just like, here it is. This is the space we play in. This is what it feels like. This is what it sounds like. This is what we share. This is what we talk about. And you don't ever have to fall from a high of having your heart touched and your heart opened and your mind opened. It just expands and you have a new conversation and then we point it over here. And then let's talk about this. What if we're changing the paradigm of how we relate to learning, to relating to each other, to what inspires us and what we create in the world? You know, it doesn't have to be an up and then down. It can be a perpetual awesome.
Yeah, and I think the perpetual awesome was not the people were being awesome. I think it was people were being open
and true
and vulnerable and had the conversations that, depends who you hang out with, are probably not normal conversations. And I think that's what was so special about it. That's what made it so wonderful, is everybody brought their vulnerability. And I think, you know, a lot of that lies with the people who came to listen.
Absolutely.
Were also very, very, you could feel like this is a room of 270 people and it's a safe space to be whoever you really are.
Nothing can come through me as a presenter, you as a presenter, everybody that was there. Nothing's going to come through if there's nobody to listen. Right? So one way that makes sense to me is we listen each other into being. So, I mean, just think about what it feels like when somebody is there listening and they don't need you to be different than you are, but they're all in with whatever you are. It invites you out. It invites you to just find what it is I actually want to be sharing. And so, yeah, absolutely. The 250 people there, the 1,000 people on the live stream, everybody from a quantum place who is going to listen to it in the future, everybody is listening us into our own expression. It's the greatest gift. Really, I really feel like listening is the greatest gift we have to offer one another. Listening without judgment. And it's what it's how the animals showed me, you know, that's what they offered me. But yeah, without the people present, without the people asking the questions and typing in, this is probably a stupid question, but, you know, I had to ask it. And then it turns out, you know, 500 other people wanted to ask that same question, right? Without people asking questions and then showing up really curious to listen, not for a correct answer, but to listen for whatever's there. That is a paradigm I want to be living in and facilitating any way that I can. It's love in action. Listening is love in action. And I think that's what we all did with and for each other at the summit. It's such a beautiful opportunity.
Yeah, it is definitely something that we want to try to replicate in other areas of our life, because it was just, you know, I think you started out with love and Rupert was the last presenter. He ended up with talking about love. So, yeah, that open-heartedness and that love was just so apparent. the whole
It
weekend?
was undeniable. Undeniable. I mean, even if somebody did go in feeling protected and defended and all that stuff, you couldn't deny the openness in the room, in the whole hotel. I mean, the hotel staff were walking up to different people throughout the weekend saying, "What are you guys doing? I just want to come sit next to you. I'm going to sweep really slow so I can hang out with you, and so I won't get in trouble. I'm still sweeping, but I just want to hang out with you guys." It's this frequency, this awareness, and sharing with this openness. It changes the physical world. This is what changes the world. And really what it takes is share what you love and go hang out with other people who do the same. It's a pretty simple formula. And we got to do that together. It was just gush. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And yeah, like I said, I feel like we're all kind of just getting started on a whole new foundation of where we can share from and who we can share for.
Yeah, it was amazing. So thank you for being a part of it.
Oh my God, thank you for inviting me. I'm like the luckiest kid in the world. And so thank you.
The next presenter we talked to was both Mark Rashid and his wife, Crissi McDonald. They both presented at the summit. And I really loved their take on their experience while at the summit. Mark and Crissi, how are you guys?
Doing great.
We're doing great. Thank you.
So you guys are home now. Did you guys go straight home from the summit?
We did.
Yep, we did. We actually drove there, so we were one of the few. We may have been the only ones that drove, and which saved us from the kind of crud I think that went around there right after it was over.
Right, you didn't have to take a plane. I went directly from there the next day. Tyler and I we rented a car, drove to Austin, flew from Austin to LA to Melbourne, Australia, got to Melbourne, Australia, 9:00 Wednesday morning, got a rental car and went straight out to the showgrounds for a big horse expo there. So I didn't really have much processing time because then I went from there. I did a clinic in Australia too. So I've only just arrived home. So it's for me right now, I'm probably just starting to slow down and process the summit. How did it go for you guys when you got home after the summit? Like, what were your thoughts on the whole thing?
Coming home from the summit started for us when we were on our drive back home. Mark and I talked for 2 days straight, just about everything we'd seen, about things we'd heard, things we learned, the connections we made with both our colleagues, the presenters, and the people who attended. Since I've had time to process it, the closest analogy I can come up with is, and you'll recognize this too, Warwick, is you're on a plane and you take off. And previously you were in the airport, you were watching people, you were doing your thing, you get in the plane, you take off, and you look out the window and you can see everyone else in their cars going to wherever they're going. You see the landscape, you see the curve of the earth, you see, as you get higher, you see more. And that is how I feel the summit was. It allowed me to get higher, to see a bigger picture. And I love big pictures. And I think Kathy was saying that for her, it allowed her to kind of reevaluate things and become unstuck. And I think that's true. I don't think I was stuck so much as I had forgotten, in the course of working, like you said, you did the summit, you did an expo in Australia, and then you did a clinic, and now you're just getting time to process. We kind of get in these tracks where we just go, we do our own thing, we're doing good work, we pay attention, we do all our things. And then the summit comes along and it's like we're blasted up to 33,000 feet. And now we can see the bigger picture, of which we are just a tiny piece. But it's so comforting, I guess, to know that there's this whole community of people. That word has been used a lot, is community. So that's how I've processed it so far.
When I first met you down there at Anita's place, I thought of you, the conversations we had, I really thought of you as a big picture person. And I thought you had a pretty good view of the big picture. So for you to have an even bigger picture after the summit, for me, it says a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what it feels like.
I've done a lot of things, and I have to say that it was like nothing that I'd ever experienced before. So I don't know that I had any expectations going in, other than, that I'd hoped that, my presentation might land with somebody and that sort of thing. But other than that, I didn't know what to expect. So I didn't really have any expectations, and I was just sort of just going to go along for the ride to see what happened. And it took me probably a week before I could even start thinking about putting it into words, what happened. It was a life-changing thing for me on a number of levels. And other than all the presentations, which were all amazing, and learned so much from everybody, but other than that, it was the human connections that were made. And it was the only time ever that I can think of in all the time that I've been doing this. I mean, going back to even when I was probably a kid, maybe then, but it's the only time when I think there were two or more professionals in the same place at the same time, heading in the same direction, where there were no conflicts, nobody was contradicting anybody, everybody was heading in the same direction at the same time, coming from a different place. But it was like spokes in a wheel all heading towards the hub, is the best way I can describe it. And the connections we made and are still making, with the presenters. I mean, we met people there that we had never met before, that felt like we had known forever, and it still feels that way.
Yeah, I felt like, not just the presenters, but the whole room was that way. It was just, like the energy there. I don't know if you guys felt the wobbly earth thing, but I,
Yeah.
the floor was moving for me, and I've described it as not as like a feeling of vertigo, because vertigo is like you're dizzy in your head. This just felt like the floor was slowly shifting, like you're on a boat or something like that for me, and it would come in waves, and it started several days before the thing. And I've talked to other people who said they felt odd stuff like that before the summit. So yeah, like you, Mark, I had no the expectations I had going in was that all the presenters were going to share something amazing, and that, well, the best case scenario for me was all the people show up, all the presenters show up, and they share whatever they're going to share, because they're all amazing people, and the live stream works. That was my benchmark. Like, that's what I was hoping was going to happen. And then something else happened, and I was really interested to hear your thoughts on your experience there, Mark, because I talked to you on Monday morning before we left, right before we went and got the rental car, and you guys were about to drive back to Colorado, and I just felt, I don't know, I felt a shift in you, like a softening, like an opening, like I don't know, you're like this, you're pretty dry and crusty, if you don't mind me saying. Not prickly, just crusty, and I don't know, you just had this, I don't know what it was, but you just had this warmth, an added warmth. Let's say you're always warm, but you're just a bit warmer than usual. And I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I thought, wow, that you feel different to me that morning in the lobby of the hotel.
Well, part of that was I was concerned about you. There was a conversation we had the night before about somebody who had written to you about something.
Yes, I remember that conversation, yeah.
And so I'd given that quite a bit of thought. We were all kind of in our, trying to visit with people that night, but you had shared with me that thing that somebody had written to you, and it was obviously, it seemed that it was concerning you quite a bit, and so I was more concerned about you really than about anything else, about how you were doing with that in it, and just the fact that you were putting so much energy into things like that, that it was, I was just concerned for you that that was maybe taking a toll that could have been adjusted to where it maybe wasn't. And I could be completely wrong about all of that and any of it, but that was because I had given that quite a bit of thought over the night and then into the morning. And I think, what I said to you that morning was that I had a couple more thoughts about that I shared with you that morning. And so that was that was not to say that I'm not a warm person, or that I wasn't warmer, but that was probably I was concerned for you, and then you were going to be going off and doing this other stuff right after. I mean, it's one thing on top of another thing on top of another thing, and I've been there and I've done that, and I know what that feels like. And so that was probably I was just concerned for you.
Well, thank you. What you told me that the night before, and so for you guys listening, I had shared a Facebook message that someone had sent to my business page, and I get a lot of those, and it was quite a not confronting towards me, but it was, this lady had shared an incident that had happened to her with a horse, and it was all pretty confronting. And I had asked Mark, does he get those and how he deals with them? And basically he said he doesn't. I think he said you don't answer things in that space anymore. But anyway, the fallout of it is I'm no longer doing that either. So thanks for your input on that. Yeah, because I think it does. Yeah, it does take a toll.
Mm-hmm. Sure does. Yeah.
Yeah, it does take a toll on you. And I read something recently that said something like, would you leave your front door open and just let anybody walk in and stand at the foot of your bed and annoy you in the morning? And, the article said, of course you wouldn't. But if you roll over and pick that phone up and you allow people to enter your mindset and, and so, I think the fallout of that, that little conversation is that I'm not answering those things anymore. There are channels of way people can get to me, but that's not one of them. And and then other fallout from the podcast summit. Well, yeah, we're reconsidering our whole life right now. We're staring at our belly button a little bit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we are too. Yeah, we are. And some of the other presenters that I've heard from, we've been in contact with several of the presenters on things that we may be able to collaborate on and so forth. There's some big shifts that are happening with several of them that we've heard from, and we are reevaluating what we're doing and how we're doing it as well. So we can see that there's a bigger. Crissi said there's a bigger picture now, much bigger picture, and the really cool thing is that we're not sort of on an island. We know that we're not on an island anymore. Not that it was that big of a deal before, but we now know that there are people we can reach out to, who we can talk to, that we can work with, that kind of we can bounce ideas off of, and they can do the same thing with us. And it's just the world got bigger for us since the podcast. And like I said before, I mean, we met people there that we had never met before that immediately felt like we'd known them all our lives. And it was just such a deep connection right off the bat.
Yeah, it was like everybody there had traveled parallel paths, but they'd never actually crossed before.
Right, exactly. That's a really good way to put it. Yep, exactly.
Mm. Yeah, well, yeah. So I just want to thank you guys for your part in it. All of you presenters are the ones that made it absolutely special. And Mark, as far as you wondering whether your presentation was going to be received well, I think it was It was perfect. And yours too, Crissi. I've said it a million times, but Kerri Lake kicked it off the first morning, and I was thinking that was amazing, but how are we going to top that? Like, it's going to just go downhill from here. And it didn't go uphill. It didn't go downhill. It just stayed at that amazing level for 3 days. And after the first day, I thought, I don't know what the rest of these guys are going to do. And the second day was the same, and the third day, I mean, right up to the very, very end, it was the same. It was just, yeah.
The energy started off at a certain level and it stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody had to push anything. Nobody had to
prove anything.
Yeah. It just, everything, it was like it was predetermined that that's the way it was going to be. And, you mentioned the floor moving, and I woke up on Saturday and told Crissi, I'm feeling a little lightheaded here. And so, I ended up, I have a little bit of an inner ear deal that I've been struggling with for a number of years. And I just thought it was something like that, but it wasn't, usually when that kicks in, it's like, I can't stand up. But it wasn't like that. It was something different. And I ended up taking something for it, and it's still, it was better, but it didn't go away until probably halfway through Monday afternoon, maybe.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So anyway, I just want to thank you guys for being a part of it, and thanks for joining me for this little bit of a recap.
Thank you, Warwick, and thank Robin and Tyler, and thank you everyone who attended, whether it's live stream or live. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. We're so grateful. Thank you.
Jillian Kreinbring's presentation at the summit was one that I really connected with, but I don't think I've only talked to anybody who didn't really connect with Jillian's presentation and how she went about it. She had up on the screen, she had really beautiful video and really moving music, and she didn't just talk the whole time. A lot of times she would say something and then let the video, the imagery and the music play. And it was probably more impactful than just a lot of talking, but the things that she said were just so profound. I need to watch it again because I really want to hear again what she had to say. But I also love talking to afterwards in this little interview. Hey, Jillian, how's it going?
It's going great, Warwick. How are you?
I'm good. So how's things after the summit? I heard you were one of the people that got the crud, that got the flu, because Robin got it for about 10 days.
Oh, man. I don't think I've ever been so sick, at least for a very, very long time. Definitely caught the crud, which is why I wasn't there for the closing circle. It just hit me so hard after lunch on Sunday, and I was so bummed about it. But it's been really, really interesting. Just the changes in my body after the summit, and I really tried to fight it because I didn't want to be sick. But then I realized that it just offered me the opportunity to go within and to assimilate that incredible frequency of energy. And I realized that, my body just wasn't used to vibrating at such a high vibration. And I had talked to some of the other folks, and we had talked about how that can release toxins in your system. And I think it just was absolutely amazing that so many of us went through the crud. In the end, kind of grateful because it allowed me to be quiet with myself and to integrate what happened there, whatever you want to call it. And now I kind of feel like I'm waking up out of a different realm, and I feel like it was almost a rebirth. Very profound.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I know a number of people had said that with that high vibrational, if you're not used to operating at that high vibration, that you can, like a lot of people got sick afterwards, and it's because their bodies weren't used to operating like that. And I haven't talked to a lot of people after the sickness, so I'm not sure how they're feeling after it. But it sounds like you've come out the other side a little bit recharged.
Yeah, I mean, I was visiting with some friends about I've been working pretty much full steam for the last 5 years. I think last year I took 12 days off in totality. And I just in this very odd way, I'm kind of glad it took me to my knees, because it forced me to take a break. It forced me to have even more introspection and not to fill my days with tasks and to-do lists, but actually just to sit and to be in that new vibration. And just amazing. I feel like my head chakra, my crown chakra just has opened up, and all these new ideas and feelings and emotions are just dropping in. And I'm just so darned grateful, Warwick. I feel like I have a new family of people that I met at the summit, that every single, blew my socks off. It was beyond an amazing experience.
Yeah, I've had other people say that, other presenters say that it's like no one there was a stranger. And the thing I have heard from other presenters too is a friend of Kerri Lake's, actually from Australia, was there, and she said, horse communities tend to be kind of cliquey, and there's this posturing and a hierarchy and that sort of thing. And she said that just wasn't present there at all, which I didn't ever expect it was going to be. But if you're not used to being around things like that, the lack of it is probably
yeah, I noticed that too. I think because everybody came to just be our authentic selves, and we've all felt so remarkably safe with one another. I've never felt like a group of people just brought the type of energy and perspective to hold everybody up while they presented. There wasn't going to be one single person who didn't fly high, because everybody just wanted to see everybody succeed so deeply. And we were so happy for one another and cheering one another on. And it's really that spirit that I would love to see within the horse industry everywhere, or any communing of people, is that, when you bring your authentic self to the table, everything is okay. And I just feel like that summit was such an example of what can be. It really happened. And that gives me so much hope for the future, for the betterment of just the human race in general. It was really remarkable.
Yeah, it certainly ended up being larger than the sum of all its parts, So did you have it sounds like you enjoyed the whole thing, but did you have like a favorite moment? Like my favorite moment did you have a favorite moment?
My favorite moment, wow, that's a hard one. I'm not sure that I had a favorite moment, because it was all just so exceptional. I think just the ability for so many of us to come together who had never met before, having the ability to look one another in the eye and hold space for one another time and time again was a favorite experience throughout the whole weekend for me. Something that really has lingered with me is giving Kathy Price hugs. I could feel our heart hug for days. Literally days after the experience, I could still feel those hugs on such a deep cellular level. And when I was sick, I would keep returning to that feeling, because it was like sitting in front of a hearth, a fire, and in that cozy, cocoony moment. That feeling was just so wonderful. And to be able to revisit that even beyond the summit, I would say was really just such a special thing for me. But every single presenter just spoke to or about something that touched me on a very, very deep level. I think I got teary during almost every single talk. So yeah, I can't say I can isolate one single thing that was my favorite. There was just so many wonderful experiences to take home with me. So
Yeah, Kathy Price, she's quite the prolific hugger. I loved your presentation. It was funny, so funny that none of the presenters were given forewarning or what they should talk about or shouldn't talk about or whatever. I just let you guys have at it. But what was interesting is that your presentation, which was amazing, was very much in line with, say, Shay's presentation, Jessica Whiteplume's presentation. It's that earth wisdom stuff that I'm so fascinated about, and I just, your presentation was absolutely, I just loved it, and I just wanted to thank you so much for your, bringing that to the summit, because you were as big a part of it as anybody. So thank you so much.
oh, you're most welcome. And I was really amazed too at how everybody's presentation just layered on top of one another. And, when you think about the time of enlightenment, there were people who were having similar ideas all over the globe without knowing one another. And I kind of felt, as we all prepared for these talks, that we were on the same frequency, and therefore all of our presentations fit together like puzzle pieces. And that's when you really know you're in the flow, and you're really connecting in that ethereal world that we all have glimpses of. And I'm just always so fascinated when that type of thing starts to happen. You have these free thinking opportunities, and because we're operating from the same source, it seems to just pull together into this beautiful tapestry. And that was, I think, quite unique about the summit.
That makes a lot of sense what you just said, because, I experienced the shifting of the floor thing that a lot of people experienced while I was there. And I actually experienced it, I think, the night before the summit even started. But some people had been feeling it for several days before. So I think everybody was operating on that same level and somehow connected without even knowing we were all connected at that point in time. Karen Rohlf was a fan favourite at the summit. I don't think you can be in the same room with Karen and hear her talk about anything and not be attracted to it's just this beautiful energy, this beautiful vibe that she brings to anything she does, whether you're just having a conversation with her or she's presenting on stage. But her presentation was really quite cool, and one of the ones I really enjoyed the most. So, what were your thoughts on the podcast summit?
That's a big topic, big open-ended question
Yeah,
there. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but it was it exceeded my expectations. I try to go into things like that without too many expectations, so maybe that's not too hard to do. But it was, it was just really satisfying on many levels. So it was fun to be there as an attendee. I did my talk and then I was like, went into attendee mode. Dana went along with me, and I was a little bit feeling like, oh, did I kind of drag him there? And he was like sitting up he was really engaged and enjoyed it. And I enjoyed giving my talk. I enjoyed how you set it up of what kind of talk to do, because it made me do a little bit different talk than I would otherwise do at a horse event. So I enjoyed presenting. I enjoyed being there as an attendee, and just the feeling in the room, I think, was one of the biggest positive. It was an experience that I'm sure, I know a lot of it came through the live stream, because I know friends who were listening to it, but and they were making the same kind of comments about the energy, but being there was, I was glad I was there.
I'm glad you were there too, because I loved your presentation. It was awesome.
Yay. I'm glad.
But
Yeah.
everybody's presentation was awesome. You know, everybody I've talked to, you know, it's kind of like you guys all didn't talk together beforehand about what you're going to talk about, but everybody was basically on the same, talking about the same sort of thing. You know, looking at the world a certain way, and yeah, and the other thing I thought happened too was I got to see I think some of the presenters actually blossomed there, like stepped into their own there. Like it was like a safe space to where you could actually show up and say exactly what you wanted to say without fear of judgment or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think all of us presenters are probably used to different size audiences and things like that, but I know there were some that was a really large audience, and it create, I think for a number of reasons, just the safe space and the way you set it up and kind of just said, tell your story. You know, you didn't have a lot of like, hey, it has to be this. So there was no pressure from you except to just the pressure of be authentic and tell your story. So that set it up to be pretty confident presenting, and just the energy of the room and the acceptance and the non-competitiveness. And it was just, yeah, it was stuff that was not easy to judge because it was just like truths. You know, it was people speaking their personal truths, and here's what I've experienced, or here's what I know. So it wasn't set up as a critical kind of experience, which was cool.
Right.
It felt playful
Did you have
too.
like yeah, it was. It was, especially when we all started dancing at the end.
Yeah.
Did you have like a favorite moment of the whole weekend, whether it was, you know, whether it was after hours, during the presentations, during the summit? Did you have a like, oh, that was the coolest part?
Um, Gosh, it's always a good question, but I think I don't categorize it as like this is my favorite, this is my, not as favorite. So it's hard, I could pick lots of moments, but um, as an attendee, I mean, giving my talk has to be favorite because I just love getting on the stage and sharing my thing and feeling the energy of the room. So that was one of the most fun presentations I've given on, at least, especially on somebody else's stage. But I really loved Jillian Kreinbring's presentation, just as a person in the room, because she really did something different, and she stood up there and let the images and the music say a lot, and then what words she did say were so powerful. So she really created an experience that was way bigger than the room. And so I got all the feels, and I was feeling really grateful to like get all those feels about the universe and animals, and we're all one, and all of that stuff without having to like tell us. She just set it up so the message came in, and in a really, really powerful way. So I think that was my favorite because it made me feel the most.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it too for exactly the same reasons you were saying. She didn't say much, but what she said was very powerful, and the images and the music really set the stage. And definitely got the feels on that one. Right, I got the feels on all of them. You know, like I had the feels all weekend. I had the feels on the airplane flying to Australia. You know, it was
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
you took Dana along, and how did he like it?
Yeah, he again, I was sort of watching him, and I'd already given him, not that he needs my permission, but just like, it's okay if you stay, it's okay if you go for a walk, it's okay. I just wanted him to not feel, obligated to sit there. And I just sort of noticed him sitting up and noticed him writing stuff. And he was very engaged. And I think um, he really connected with Nashawn. I think just the artist connecting with artists, because Dana's a musician. Um, and when Nashawn just comes on and just starts singing, and I
Yeah.
think Dana was sort of, as we all were, rather mesmerized by him. So I think it was just again, Dana's a man of few words, but the he was there and engaged and participating and socializing. I mean, I think he that's the vibe that he lives in too. This, like, we're all connected and it's all, love each other, and that's what he was connected to. The fact that we all had horses in common didn't matter. It was just like he was hearing the messages, and all of this has something to do with horses, but that's just one of the things that it has to do with it. It was all about life and humans and connection and energy, and all is one. And somehow that was, being the best versions of ourselves we can be was a common theme, and he was really connecting with that.
He wasn't the only husband doing his wife a favor that weekend. There was a guy in the audience who he trains race car drivers how to race, and he came along as a favor to his wife, and he was fascinated. I talked to him several times, and he was fascinated by the whole thing. He was just right on the edge of his seat, like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
the stuff. This is the stuff I want to get across to the drivers."
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, and he's very involved in the business and stuff like that. So he was there really thinking, actively supporting it, but I think listening to it, he thought he was going to get different things out of it, like how are they running the event, and like more
Right.
strategic-y sort of things. And I just knew right away, he was like, oh, he's just here. He's just attending. And so it was fun to share that. And I think that kind of connects with what I think was the biggest. I was trying to think, like, how could I describe the energy in the room? And I like to tempt myself to get it down to one word, if I had to pick a word. And the word that kept coming up was belonging. And it was
Mm.
this feeling of belonging, which I know Brene Brown stuff, and the difference between belonging and fitting in. And I thought, here's a room full of people who probably have felt that they are the oddball, that they don't fit in, that they don't do things the same as everybody else around them. And so they never quite fit in. And then here we are in a room where the space that you created allowed this sense of belonging. And I love the way Brene Brown talks about the difference between belonging and fitting in. And it's something, like, I'm probably not going to get this just right, but it's something about true belonging is like believing in yourself and being able to show yourself to the world, and to at the same time, I think she says, like, be a part of something and be able to stand alone in the wilderness, right? So you're part of something, but you're alone, and you don't have to change yourself to try to fit in. You actually have to be more of yourself. So it's interesting because belonging is an internal thing. It's a state of mind. It's a way of, it comes from the inside out. However, there are environments that make that really hard to do, and environments that make it much easier to have that sense of belonging. And that's what you created. And somehow there's probably lots of factors going in, but you created this space where everyone can kind of go, oh, I can be me. And being me is appreciated. And there's a whole bunch of other people who, all the other oddballs who are also feeling belonging, and we don't have to change. We just can be who we are. And I think that was, as a presenter, the trust you showed of just going, it's got to be 20 minutes and don't talk about horse techniques. Go. Like, that was a lot of trust to say, hey, you're coming and I want to hear what you have to say. So that right away was like, oh, I can just be me and share what makes me excited to share.
Well, I'd had
Something like
everybody on the
that.
podcast, so I
Yeah.
had a good idea of the way they view the world, and I wanted them to just, hey, distill down what is it you think people should know, and all of you guys just rocked it. It was absolutely amazing. I've said it before, but Kerri Lake started out the first day and was absolutely amazing, and I was kind of thinking, oh, not that that was too good, but how is everybody going to match that? And everybody did without trying. It was one of those things you can't. It was much larger than the sum of all its parts. And I'd just like
Yeah.
to thank you for trusting us and coming along and being a part of it.
Oh, my pleasure. I was feeling very grateful to be a part of it. I know that if I had seen it happening and I wasn't there, I would have been so wanting to be there. So I was like, yeah, I get to be there.
Well, yeah. Well, we're so grateful that you came along, and it was wonderful to share that experience with you.
Cool. My pleasure. Thank you.
Our good friend Kathy Price came all the way from Wales to present, and Kathy's a very energetic being and does a lot of work in that space. And so it was really, really good to have a chat with her afterwards and get her thoughts on her whole experience there, including talking about how the energy was there. Kathy, how's it going since the podcast summit?
That's a really good question, Warwick. I'm not actually sure I'm capable of giving you a coherent answer, but I will do my best. Wonderful is one word that springs to mind. Mind-blowing is another, in the literal sense of the word, that I just think my brain has exploded into a different place. My consciousness has gone somewhere else. Expansion is the word that comes to mind. So normal sort of things. After you've been to a meeting.
So tell me, without outlining every minute of every day, how would you summarize your experience at the summit?
Happiness, gratitude, learning, and hugging.
Yes, I was talking to someone yesterday. I forget who I was talking to, but they were talking about getting a Kathy Price hug, and I said, "Yeah, well, she's a pretty prolific hugger." So who was it? It was either Rohlf or Jillian. One or the other was talking about receiving a Kathy Price, or it might have been Crissi McDonald actually, about receiving a Kathy Price hug. But I said, "Yeah, Kathy's hugs are pretty full on."
Yeah, no, I was in my element, I have to admit, and it was so lovely that everybody was in the same mood, and that I'd see people over and over, and it was like, yeah, another hug coming in. That's absolutely perfect. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it as much as they did, hopefully.
Yeah, it just felt pretty normal to hug people there for some reason.
It was so, I don't know, like there were no barriers. Everybody was on the same wavelength. Everybody was supporting everybody else. You felt absolutely safe. You knew you could go up and speak to anybody and you'd be spoken back to. There was no cliquiness, or, as I think Christine said in the podcast the other day, no velvet rope, where people, people were putting themselves behind a virtual barrier. It was all for one and one for all. And it's really interesting because I spoke to a friend of mine last night who watched some of the recording live, and she felt it just the same. She's here in Wales, and she said, I could feel that energy just watching.
Yeah, well, while the live stream was going on, a lot of people were commenting on the live stream that they felt the energy, but I've heard from people who watched it back afterwards, not live stream, but post, several weeks afterwards, and they said you can you feel that energy out of the
It's so
out
cool.
of the replay, because the live stream now is not a live stream anymore. It's now a video library.
The
And Tyler's
recording,
chopped it up
yeah.
Tyler's chopped it up into chapters to where you can just click on whichever presentation you want to click on. You don't have to watch you don't have to scroll through the whole thing. But I've heard people that have had that experience with it
It's
after the fact.
yeah. I mean, I've heard of people reading books and getting that sort of jolt of energy from that. But I mean, if you think of the number of people that were there, all on the same wavelength, all immersed in that energy, it's not surprising that, you can watch the recording and feel that, because it's tangible, it's energy.
Yeah, well, I guess, if you remember, like Rupert on the podcast, and when I first interviewed him, his energy caused all the
Yes.
equipment to disrupt. So you think about if you are watching a recording of something, how are you watching this recording? It's energy. So I think there's a possibility that there's an energy in the recording that comes through in the recording. I don't know, but
I think that makes absolute sense to me. It's the same as the written word. There's energy in the word as well as you read those words. But I mean, especially in the recording, like you said, that's the medium by which you're actually watching is an energetic frequency. And so if that recording was made with that frequency, that high frequency of energy, yeah, it's there. And if you're open to receiving, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
Did you have like a favorite moment of the whole thing? Like that part there was the coolest thing.
I think I loved the dancing at the end. I absolutely adored that. That was just because everyone just went wild. I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah, so at the end of it, Rupert Isaacson finished it off with getting everybody up and dancing, and it was kind of like for 3 days, people have been sitting there glued to that stage, like so intense, and it was like this. It was like a release,
Yeah, I think that's right, and it was just such fun, and everybody joined in. The whole audience were there, because I could not pick a favourite speaker. I couldn't do it because everybody brought something so unique and so powerful. Individually, you'd say, oh yeah, that one. Like you said, Kerri started it all off, but everybody then was of the same game as that. It was just amazing. And it was also, it was lovely to have people in the audience who knew your work and you knew they had your back, that if you stumbled somewhere along as you were doing your talk, they'd be there. I had 2 ladies who said they were going to do the Mexican wave. So, that was just really...
That's right. They told you, they said, you'll be fine. If you kind of get stuck and stumble, we'll just stand up and get the crowd doing the wave.
Yeah. And it was so reassuring and to know that they were there and, such fun. I almost wanted them to do the wave anyway, but next time. Yeah, no, it was brilliant.
Next time. I asked you, did you have a favourite moment? And you said, well, all the presenters were really good. Not necessarily just the presenters, because I know for you and me, because we were both there, one of our favourite moments of the whole thing was Sunday night after it was all over. We're all downstairs having dinner in that bar, and Jane was sitting next to Nashawn, and they started... Jane's from New Zealand, and she ordered... They don't have a spicy palate in, spicy food much in New Zealand. And Jane ordered buffalo chicken wings. And when they arrived, so buffalo chicken wings they're a chicken wing with a sauce on that has a lot of spice in it. And she didn't know they were spicy. And when they arrived, I think she made some sort of comment like, well, I didn't realize I thought they were buffalo. I don't know what it was. But her and Nashawn started cracking up. And they giggled like children for half an hour, and they were snorting, and the tears were just running down their face. And this went on and on and on. And it was just so joyous to see. And they almost stop. They'd be done. And then they'd kind of just look at each other and away it would go again. And it was just so cool to watch those two.
Oh, that was so cool, I must admit. And they just could not speak. They were laughing so much, they were crying. And I mean, Nashon was sort of rolling almost in his chair because he was clutching his stomach. And Jane was sort of bent double. So yeah, that was a pretty special moment, I have to say. Even when you didn't know exactly what the joke was, it just made you giggle watching them.
Oh no, I didn't know what the joke was until afterwards, but I took video of them. I was sitting there mesmerized by how much these two were just wholeheartedly just laughing their heads off.
Yeah,
you know?
that's so cool to see.
It was so like innocent and childlike sort of thing. It was so it was very, very cool. But I just wanted to thank you for your part in the whole thing. You know.
Well, my absolute pleasure. Goodness, because I said to Robin the other day, it's thanks to your friendship support that I have reached so many people and reached their horses and have been able to help. So a huge debt of gratitude to you for trusting me to come on your podcast in the first instance, because I couldn't have done it without you, put it that way. And also obviously going on the summit. So, you know, back at you. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Like I said, thank you so much for being a part of it. And you know, it was the combined energy of all the presenters, I think, coming together with the combined energy of all the people attending that just made the whole thing into magic.
It's, as you said right at the beginning, I think at the end of the first day, nobody could have imagined what was going to happen in the way it did. You know, you were sort of hoping that all the organisation went and that the speakers would come and say their piece okay. But I don't think we ever could have envisaged that combined energy and the effect it would have on the whole, not only the whole event, but everybody there and everybody watching the recording. I mean, how on earth can you plan for that?
Oh, we didn't.
Yeah, I know.
But we are planning for next year, so.
Yeah, no, it's a unique thing to have all of the people and their different energies, their different take on. For me, after the first day, when I listened to the talks, I thought everybody is, in essence, talking about intention, energy, intuition, and connection. That if you boiled it down on all of the talks, whether they were, you know, working with horses themselves or, you know, all of that, those were the four main components. And I suppose they are, for me, the four main components of everything. But it was, for me, so beautiful that everybody was bringing their own way of explaining how they use those four items, those four sort of properties, four gifts, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, that was really cool.
It sure was. So hey, thanks for joining me for a catch up, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Well, thank you, Warwick. Lovely to see you as always.
Barbra Schulte's been an inspiration to me for quite a long time, and an inspiration to many other people too. And at the summit, she was inspirational, both in her presentation and her participation in the panel discussions, and also just her presence of being there. And you know, I got such a sense of the wonderfulness of Barbara's presence when I had this chat with her about her experience at the summit. So, Barb, can you give me your impressions of the summit? I think everybody's probably got a different impression of it, but what were your thoughts on it?
Well, knowing that I was going to talk to you, I thought about it because I didn't want to just give some kind of oh, it's so great kind of answer, and that's all I had to say, although it was so great. I really have two or three main things. The first is the energy that was there that was created by the group, meaning the cohesive, like everyone, you and Robin, the audience, the presenters, and the incredible positivity. I was trying to think of the right word, but there was this openness and this curiosity and this enthusiasm and like tremendous expectation with the non-judgment. And it was like everybody was just getting like filled up with this great energy, and yet everybody was giving every part they had to give of themselves, the presenters, but I think also the audience, because of how they how involved they were. Just you could feel them just going soaking it up. And so it was this effortless, incredible positivity that just enveloped me and made me smile and filled me up. And yet I was willing to give every bit of what I had with no effort. So that's the first thing. I was really trying to describe how I felt. And within all of that was this great joy and amazement to be listening to all of these presenters, because as an equine professional, I have my friends and we talk, and I have great collaborations I do with people, but I don't ever get to do it as a group. And also, I don't get to do it in a way that is just open and happy and non-judgmental. So I really love that part. So the next thing, and this gives me chills and almost makes me want to cry. So I don't think I'm going to cry, but I might, is the presenters themselves. Like each of us, and I'll say me included because I felt this way, but what I'm mainly saying is what I saw in other people, like came, and because we had to make it a 20-minute, and Robin made it perfectly clear that it would only be 20 minutes, which is good. We gave our best. We had to decide what is the message that we want to give this audience. Like, you guys didn't tell us that. So it was very freeing and vulnerable, but supported at the same time. And because of that energy that I described earlier, there was this sense of no one's going to really judge me. I mean, or they're looking for the good stuff. You know how in performance, and by the way, I've been really enjoying your book. You talk about focus on what you want, not what you don't want. It was like people were listening for the jewels of what they could take. It wasn't like, I don't agree with that, so she's not right. It was like none of that kind of stuff. It was like, oh, I'm just fascinated by each person standing up there, speaking from their heart and soul, and also what I was learning. I mean, I'd learned so many things. And so I felt this two-way, like I was a presenter that had that experience, and I was really glad I got to go early, because then I just got to kind of sit back and not think about getting up there. Anyway, that's just a little sidebar. But and I also was an audience member, and then we all, as presenters, sat in the kind of a general area, so that there was this immediate sense of community I'm just really taken by being able to experience that part too. That really was very, very meaningful to me and still is, because those are such golden people. Everybody and the people there, audience. I don't want to leave the audience out because they were there because they were at least in that time in that same energy. Uh, and I also thought that there was a thread that went through all of the talks that 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 connected them all in about our inner spirit and how we access it and what it means to live joyfully and lovingly, and how most of us that presented are teachers in some way or writers or whatever, and so how we personally access it and how we teach it, and what the horse, that obviously came into it. But so that was interesting to me. I mean, I love that. It was like, oh wow, that's cool. Yeah, that's exactly what I think, but now I have more layers. That's what I came away with in that way. um so that's it mainly. I mean, not that that's all, but that's my short story.
Yeah, when you said you were listening to the other presenters, because I had to kind of introduce everybody, I sat off on that side wall over by the AV table there, and so I could see, all the, for you guys listening at home, all the presenters were sitting on one side of the room, and I could see all you guys' faces, and it wasn't like you were listening because I'm supposed to sit here and listen to this thing. Like every one of the presenters there was kind of leaning forward and engaged, and like their heads were nodding and their eyes were wide open, and they were fascinated. That's one thing I noticed, but something else you just touched on then was your presentations all had a common thread, and the only information we gave people was it's got to be 20 minutes long, and I want you to just tell us the message you want the world to hear in 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that there was this group collaboration beforehand, but there wasn't. But everybody came very open-heartedly and very authentic and very honest. And it was like you guys had all planned it beforehand, but no one had even talked to each other beforehand. So I thought that was pretty amazing about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, and to be in just the excitement of meeting, for me personally, so many new people that my paths may never cross unless maybe I happen to be with them at an expo or something like that. And then at expos, you're just going wide open, and there's a lot of frenetic kind of activity, so you don't get to really hang. So that was just lovely. The whole thing was lovely. And you and Robin are just the best. And the way that you designed it and orchestrated it and thought of things. And I was also amazed that you included us in the pre planning. I was thinking, how's this going to work for, you have 22 people planning something. But it was just amazing. It flowed.
Did you have a favorite moment from the whole thing? And I know that's hard to say because there was a lot of amazing moments, but did you have like one favorite moment, like, oh, this was so cool, whether it was during the summit or during the after hours where you're talking to somebody? Did you have a favorite moment?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I don't think so. I don't think there's like one moment for me that just jumped out at me. I was very immersed, even in my room. I was immersed in just the whole thing. And Warwick, I was thinking about this while we were trying to get connected. I don't think that in my life I have ever experienced the such a large amount, like it was like you're with a close friend that you can be yourself and not be judged in mass. That whole non-judgmental, caring, just open feeling of feeling it towards me and giving it was something I have never experienced in that quantity. Non-judgment is really something, and it truly is, to me, the thing that I can describe it most is like how you feel when you're with your closest friend, when you look like you have a black eye and you've done something that maybe you shouldn't have done, and or just something, or something's bothering you, and you can just totally be yourself and feel love in return. I just want to mention that.
Yeah, it's almost whole Sarah Schlotte's definition of attunement, the sense of being seen, being heard, feeling felt, and getting gotten. You could actually completely be your authentic self and everybody got it. You know what I mean? Like everybody, when you came with that authentic self, everybody was like, that's perfectly fine with me. I get you.
Mm-hmm.
I know where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I want that. I get it, but also, or I want to see you. I want to hear you. I want to, just it was like all the armors were down without fear. So.
Yeah, and it was like that from the start. Like I said, like all the presenters kind of, even though you didn't know it, you were all ended up talking about the same thing, but it was almost like everybody showed up with their armor down.
Mm-hmm.
Presenters and people. It wasn't like, oh, we warmed into it or whatever. It was like that from the moment it started.
Yeah. I think Warwick, I think that you and Robin set the stage for that, really. Just the nature of your podcast is like that. And for me, I can just say that I was honored and grateful to be there. And, I just thought it was like one of those things in my life. I mean, I had no idea it was going to be as good as it was. I mean, I expected it to be really good, but I don't think anyone could really ever know that until we went. So anyway, I'm very grateful to you guys.
Well, we are so grateful that you came and were a part of it, because, you were as big a part of it as anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Every morning at the summit, the presenters would gather together on an outside balcony right outside the room we were presenting in, and Jessica White Plume would do a smudging ceremony with us. So she had some white sage, and she would smudge us, and it was an amazing way to get really centered and grounded and start the day. And, she just has this presence about her. And when I had this chat with her about the podcast summit, every time I'm around her, I just get a sense of that presence of hers, and talking to her here was no different. Hey, Jess, good to see you again.
Hello, Warwick. So good to see you again in the computer this time, but I know what you look like in person now. I've seen you. I've met you. We've gotten hugs.
I was just going to say, yes, I've met you, but I've felt you, like I've sensed you, So that's a totally different than just doing it on the computer screen. Although when we did record the podcast, I definitely felt you then too. So
it's cool how that works. It's cool.
Very
I was so
cool.
happy to get to feel a lot of the people that we met in person, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was amazing. So just, this little catch up is just to get your impressions of what you thought of the summit, and maybe what you any experiences you may have had there.
Right. So the summit was this gathering, and it was, going into it was a little bit starstruck and a little bit like, wow, like I'm going to be really swimming with a big fish here, and a little excited, a little anxious, but I was at the same time, in hindsight, having had this conversation, a number of people were talking, and you were talking about having like the ground was a little bit wobbly, and I did have that just a few times, just like maybe 3 or 4 times leading up to the summit. And then the summit was amazing as far as just meeting these people. Like you said, when you get to be near someone and you feel their energy, and there's like a coherence, right? I'm really aware of the truth as far as vibration and the coherence of frequencies, and we were kind of all on this certain level of frequency, it felt to me, and that amplifies it. And so it was like this weird experience of, on the one hand, people are sharing this great information, and on the other hand, it was just like, I don't even know if I could hear it, because I was just feeling this energy of the room the whole time, and so excited, and also trying to keep a level of groundedness and just give that mindfulness to the person in front of me that I might be talking to, rather than everything. So the summit was really amazing in that way, as far as the people. For me, that's always what it's about, is the people. So that was the time of the summit. And then coming back, someone had asked me, actually did another podcast with Heather Drummond, and she had asked me, how do we reconnect with your family and horse, things back at home? And, that's a good question. I don't know if I find it very difficult, because we're so out here in the country, and really blessed and privileged to be able to do that. Like, I don't have to try to go out into somewhere to reconnect. It's all here. Like, so it doesn't take much effort, but it did make me aware of being away from that. But I mean, we were in the city, we were in San Antonio. And so we were, I think a number of us were looking around like for a tree or, some bit of nature, because I guess to me, that's a big part of the connection that we're all moving towards. And you had talked about that, as far as that was part of your interest in Indigenous cultures, is that connection to nature and how that plays into us and vice versa. So I was really happy that Jillian did her presentation the way that she did, because if I had another 20 minutes, that's probably what I would have tried to do. But I think she probably did it better with the music and the imagery about, the animals are not animals per se. They are nations. They are in many ways older and wiser than we are. Same for the trees, same for the rocks. And she just did it so beautifully. And it was, when I came back, it was just a reminder that it's hard to be what we want to be without nature. It's just, it really makes it a lot more difficult. So got me thinking about those things. And interesting, after I'm just reflecting, I took a moment before our visit here to go see the horses and have a little moment of meditation, so to speak. And, there's really been a number of things coming to a head, kind of coming to decision points, I guess, like kind of big things after I've returned after the summit. And I feel like I'm just that much more solid in myself to be prepared for those and respond to them, maybe with less worry about outcomes. I like to think I carry those values all the time, but to have that reinforced and have so much support from the summit community certainly makes everyone feel stronger, I believe, and more solid, and certainly for me. And that's what I'm feeling like going into some of these really larger decisions as far as our life and the school and work and the future, and just feeling good about it. I asked my horse and he said the future looks bright, so we're going with that.
That's awesome. You are not the only presenter who came back from the summit and is making some major life decisions that are different than what they'd planned before the summit. So it was a little bit like a like when if you go away and do a plant medicine ceremony or whatever, and you come back from that, like you might decide, oh, I'm going to make this huge change in my life. And it was a little bit like that. It's interesting. You were talking about the energy there and you were talking about it beforehand. So I re-listened to a podcast the other day when Tyler and I were actually driving around Australia. Tyler hadn't heard this podcast, so I had him listen to it, which was with Tim Ferriss and a South African named Boyd Varty. And Boyd Varty has written some books. One's called The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life. But he was telling a story about how he got attacked by this swarm of bees one time in Africa. But he's talking about how their energy changes at exactly the same time. It's not like one takes off and then the rest of them do it. And some other of the presenters from the summit I talked about the other day, I can't remember who I was talking to, was talking about they felt the energy ramping up before they even got there. And like everybody was connected before they even got there. But the other thing was you just talked about Jillian's presentation. I didn't give the presenters a guideline on what to talk about. I said 20 minutes, just make it 20 minutes, no more than 20 minutes, and it's your message to the world. And if you think about it, everybody was on the same wavelength. It's like we had a tutorial on what to do your presentation on. And it was like you guys were a hive mind from across the country and across the world. Rupert came from Germany and Kathy Price came from Wales and Jane came from New Zealand. But it's like you guys had this connected energy from around the country and around the world before it even started, because it was, the energy was like I had the floor shifts a few days before and during, and other people said they had the floor shifting before too. So it's really interesting how that works.
It does. And I guess I feel like we're not just doing that hive mind with each other, which we are, which is amazing, and like you think about the swarms of fish or the birds who do that, there's like a level of communication that's way before and after and beyond what we think we know about communication. And so that's awesome. And at the same time, I think it's like we're tapping into universal truths. It's not like we're all, getting smart enough to, or just vibing with each other, but we're like vibing with the universal truths of things. I feel like that was maybe what was happening.
Yeah, and not just, it wasn't just the presenters either. It was everybody at the summit. Some of the attendees said they started to feel a bit wobbly even before they got there too. So yeah, it was pretty amazing. Did you have a favorite? I know it's probably hard to say, but did you have like a favorite moment, a favorite presentation, a favorite moment, a favorite interaction with someone? Did you have the one thing that just was the cherry on top of your amazing weekend?
Oh, I don't know if I could answer that one. I have a basket of cherries. I'll say. I could point out some favorite moments. Of course, I love Dr. Susan's thing with the banana, not just because it's brilliant, but it also just like lightened us all up in a way. And I feel like that's a balance that's kind of needed energetically too. Like you just take that breath and laugh a bit, and and same thing with with Jim Masterson and those guys that are kind of like the cowboy character, but they're also light and they're also deep, and it just kind of brings that whole roundedness to everything. And of course Jillian, and of course her talk was right in line with, like I said, what I would have done. But everybody was amazing. I feel like Kerri Lake is like my sister from another mister. And Barb is like my auntie that I've claimed now. She's accepting that I'm claiming her.
They're all
but
awesome.
Again, it's hard to choose. It's hard to say. There were many moments, and people in the crowd. Somehow I was just visiting with Kerri, and they started doing the autographs. So I'm like signing autographs, which I found slightly awkward because I need to own that. But also I got to meet a lot of people from the crowd, and they're just so genuine and happy to be there. And it was it's hard to pick. And of course, maybe the cherry was to get to eat dinner with you all and spend some time with you and Robin and Tyler, and just get to see the whole family package and you all working together, which is not an easy thing, I would think. And just impressed and just happy to spend time with you all.
Yeah, the feeling's mutual. It was amazing to spend time with you. I've got a lot of I've got a basket of cherries too, but one of the cherries in my basket is your smudging session in the morning. So we would go out on that balcony, and whichever the presenters would show up out there, and you would smudge us with some sage, which was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, the smudging, the azalea is with one of our plants, and as I was thinking back of that's really what it is. It's a way to connect us with that, the power and the connectedness of nature, intentionally, because here we are sitting in a building in the middle of a city. Or it might be any other situation where we are drawn more into our frontal lobe of our brain, and it would do us well to reconnect with the spirit and the nature of things. So we use our sage. I think it's called white sage in English, and we burn it, and that smoke helps us to do that, to reconnect that way, and kind of washes off. The word azalea, it means to wipe off. So we're like wiping things off of us that don't maybe serve us too well. And then they go out into the, atmosphere, and to wherever they will go without harming anybody. That's part of when we say that, that there are things, a lot of ceremonies have that bit, like there's something on you or whatever, and we want to remove it. And the way I was taught is that we make sure to ask intentionally that it goes out, but not to someone else, that it would never, put stress on anyone else. So all that to say, it's a small practice that we can do, that we do daily. Our kids do it actually without even our asking. That just helps us stay connected in a crazy world sometimes.
So you do that every day?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Every day, just in the morning, or in particular, if I'm feeling like stressed about or going into a situation where I might need, again, more than just my brain working a million miles an hour, but I want to come into it in a good way, then I might smudge. And I'm happy the kids have done that too. They, or if they see something that might be a spirit or something that indicates their spirits nearby, they will, say, should we smudge, or should we put out some food for them, or something like that. So it makes me happy that they're thinking, or they're aware of that as a help for them, if that makes sense.
I'd love to meet your kids someday. I bet they're amazing. They just sound wonderful.
They are. They're really cool kids. Parenting is something else, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys are doing great from what we can tell.
Yeah, we're quite proud of Tyler. We're not sure where he came from, but he's a blessing.
no, it's just amazing to see you all in such good relationship, and it's not too common. So it's awesome to see that.
Thank you. You know what I was going to comment on? You went home from the summit. So San Antonio, it's in November, but it was kind of hot and sticky. Not hot, but it was very muggy there, very humid, and kind of warm. It wasn't cold at all. And you went home, and the next day you posted a picture on Facebook of you outside with your horse, and your horse's face. There's a lot of photographs of this, but every once in a while you'll see a photograph of a bison, of a buffalo with snow or ice caked to his head, and it's like this amazing image. And here's a picture of you outside with your horse right beside your head's beside your horse's face, and your horse's face is covered in ice or snow. And it's like, whoa, you went from sticky San Antonio straight back to that.
I did, yeah, I had to, but I knew it was going to be that, so I packed like an extra jacket, because just even from the airport door to your vehicle is like, could be blizzard conditions, so you want to bring an extra jacket. But yeah, that's where we are. We're in North Dakota, and the snow was coming, and that particular day, it's almost one of the most enjoyable times, because the snow was just starting to come and it was really fluffy still. So it probably looked extreme, but it wasn't as extreme as it looked, because the snow was really light and fluffy still, and the temperatures were still, in the 30s. And
you said it wasn't extreme. It wasn't extreme as it looked. So I heard an old saying years ago about someone got bucked off a horse or something or other, and they said to this old cowboy sitting on the fence, "Did he buck hard?" And the old guy sitting on the fence said, "Well, that depends whether you were sitting on his back or sitting on the fence." It's your perspective, and when you're used to that, you might think, "Oh, that's not that extreme," but yeah, it certainly looked pretty extreme to me.
It's yeah, you're right. It's probably perspective. I was enjoying that day. I do really enjoy the winter times and connections, and large part because of the ride, which I shared with you all about in my presentation.
Yeah.
There's just something about that, being in the elements, and you almost just can't sit there and think about, a deadline on Monday or whatever. And there is such a beauty to it. Like, it takes a minute to get there, but it is, snow is really beautiful, and the winter colors are beautiful, and just that connection with the horses at I don't know, if it's a survival level or just the elemental level. I guess you're back to the elements,
right? Yeah,
rather than
back to nature. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's what Kerri Lake before the summit had said. This is a beautiful event that celebrates the evolution of human consciousness in the context of life among horses. And I really think it's really reconnecting with nature. And, for some people, their connection to nature starts with horses. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that, if they are urban dwellers and they have a horse somewhere or whatever, yeah, I think that
right.
Yeah, I think it's
a big part of that. Yeah.
I think it's like connecting with nature is what expands your consciousness. But some people's first, the podcast is not about horses, but I think that the journey might be from first connecting with horses, which is your intro to nature, which is your intro to consciousness. I don't know how that goes. But anyway, we probably should wrap this up, but I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of the summit. I think you fit right in there, and you said at the start of this, like, "Oh, I got there and I felt like I was swimming with the big fish." And then you said with the autograph signing, you said that felt weird. I think you are a big fish. I think what you bring to the world is something that's sorely needed.
Well, thank you. I will just learn to say thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the efforts that you all have made and continue to do, and the energy that you bring to it. Thank you so much. All of you.
You're welcome. Before you go, I've got a... So Jane Pike was at our place a couple of years ago. Might have been when she was here for the World Equestrian Games, or a couple of years ago she came out for a horse expo. But we're in the kitchen and someone gave someone a compliment and the other person kind of dismissed it. And Jane said, stop. Right there. Well, don't do that. Accept the compliment. Be present in the compliment. Don't dismiss it. And so I just want you to be present. And
yes, Jane. I love Jane. That was another cherry. I love Jane and her being like the spirited filly there. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, it's all right to be excited.
Filly, I love that.
Excited is good too, you know? Yes.
Yeah, she was amazing. Okay, I'll let you go, but thank you so much for joining me for this little bit of a wrap-up. And once again, thanks for being a part of the summit.
You are welcome, Warwick. Thank you.
Jessica's such a treasure, isn't she? I just love her energy. I'm sure you can feel it coming through the podcast. It was so good to have her there and all the other guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Journey On podcast and a bit of a recap of our summit. We did live stream it at the time, and that live stream is now turned into a video library where Tyler has taken all the presenters and made chapters out of each one. So if you want to go on there and skip forward to your favorite presenter, you can, or if you want to watch it from the beginning, you can too. And in order to view that, just go to summit.warwickschiller.com and you can sign up there. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll catch you next time on the next episode of the Journey On podcast.
Thanks for being a part of the Journey On podcast with Warwick Schiller. Warwick has over 850 full-length training videos on his online video library at videos.warwickschiller.com. Be sure to follow Warwick on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram to see his latest training advice and insights.